welcome once again to Sid Caudle, Christian People's Alliance. Sid, I hope you're on your mettle today because, my goodness me, I'm going to put you through it. We're going to start easy. No deal from Islamabad. Well, that's a surprise, isn't it? And you've got a situation there a bit fascinating that because whether the Trump man was sending J.D. Vance to his slaughter, I don't know. But the story behind that, of course, is that you heard nothing from the vice president for a long time. And then it leaked out that he wasn't in favour of the war. So what did Trump do? Send him to Islamabad. And we got the result. Has JD learned anything by going there?
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, because it looks as though the next election is going to be between JD Vance and Marco Rubio. And you begin to get a feeling as though Donald Trump is beginning to steer towards Marco Rubio as going to preserve his inheritance better than JD Vance. Um, at the beginning of Donald Trump's presidency, J.D. Vance appeared to be absolutely, a wonderful breath of fresh air, so much better than Mike Pence. Mike Pence, who was just standing behind Donald Trump all the time, apparently just keeping an eye on him and feeding stuff back to the deep state. And J.D. Vance was like, ploughing his own furrow in support of Donald Trump. But now all of a sudden, it seems as though he's not ploughing his own furrow in support of Donald Trump. It looks as though he's now beginning to distance himself on a lot of issues from Donald Trump. And it is a clear departure. And I think over time, it will make him less popular because in the polls up to now, JD Vance has been over 50%. Marco Rubio, by the way, has still been getting over 30%. So that's why I say it's between those two. So that's for the next presidential election. So yeah, it's what's going on is extremely interesting. The dynamics are extremely interesting, and you could well be right. Donald Trump may well have sent J.D. Vance to Islamabad to say, "Okay, you don't want the war to take place. Go and settle it then." He's no Donald Trump doesn't mess about. He's like, you prove your mettle.
Yes, indeed. But it's strange that Trump is so unpopular in Europe because it's so leftist. And even people that are centrists, let's christen them, are so anti-Trump because the media, except for the odd newspaper and the odd GB News, is pumping out the same thing day after day. Trump is bad. We're all in a war. We're all going to suffer, and it's Trump's fault.
Yes, and it's not true. I mean, you see, if I'm talking to anybody like that, I immediately say, what about the estimated 40,000 at least demonstrators that Iran killed in cold blood, unarmed demonstrators that Iran killed in cold blood? You're saying that you're not concerned about them, and Trump should have done nothing about them. And what about the fact that Iran very clearly said if they get a nuclear weapon, they will use it to wipe out Israel? And they've also apparently got new rockets where they can now fire rockets as far as Europe. So, they've also been unafraid to threaten the United Kingdom. And they've now got rockets that could land in the United Kingdom. So it's like, allowing Iran to get a nuclear weapon is utterly irresponsible. And the action, I'm afraid, that America and Israel are taking right now is totally necessary. I'm absolutely disgusted that Keir Starmer actually said to America, "Will not allow you to use your bases on British soil, or on British islands." They're American bases, that Keir Starmer has said will not allow you to use, because they're on our soil. And it's utterly disgusting. You only say that if you're totally opposed to something that they're doing. So Keir Starmer's actually adopting a position where he is totally opposed to the United States and Israeli attack on Iran. And quite honestly, I think he's completely on the wrong side of history. This bringing Iran to heel is totally necessary, absolutely necessary.
It is, and it's not just 60,000 innocents, it's the millions over the years that Iran's been responsible for.
Mm,
It's horrendous.
mm,
We've got no backbone, any of us maybe at the moment, because all we do is look towards the weekend for
mm,
party time. We
mm.
don't take the long-term view. That's typical of English politics as well.
Yes, but absolutely. But it's you say the long-term view, but actually, yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer is desperate to try and win back the support of the Muslims in the UK. But I think he's already lost it, frankly. I mean, there's a lot of Muslim independents now that have already got seats in the House of Commons that are going to probably be very successful in certain areas in these local elections, as well as the Greens that have come out rabidly in support of Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. I mean, and totally opposed to anything the United States does. I mean, I'm afraid the Muslims are going to support either the independents or the Greens, or even the Lib Dems that have also come out in support of Hamas and Hezbollah. You know, the Labour Party aren't going to win them back, even though they're trying like crazy to. They're not going to. They're not going to succeed.
You'll be pleased to know I've just been handed a paper, actually just before we started this recording, Sid, that has highlighted the fact that the new system of allowing people to be resident in the United Kingdom comes with quite a number of questions to see how much they know about England and Britain in general. And one of the questions is about Eid, about Ramadan, and quite a number of festivals. That's in the actual from the Home Office. That's in the questionnaire you have to answer. Wow. I mean, are people stupid? Are people blind? Do they not realize what's going on? They soon will.
Oh, so I mean, so if I'm from Ukraine, for instance, and I'm wanting to come to the United Kingdom because I'm fleeing a war, I'm applying for British citizenship, and I've got to answer questions on Eid. And
Yes, yes. And if you fail, that's it. Offski.
I mean, to me, that shows that Muslims have got hold of the Home Office. Because it seemed to be clear anyway that the Home Office was increasingly becoming more pro-Islam, but that really underlines it. And I guess with Mahmoud as Home Secretary, we shouldn't be surprised either. I mean, she's making noises to make people think that she's right wing. She's not really. She's just making those noises so that when she does things undercover that is promoting Islam, people will think, "Oh, I'm surprised that Mahmoud's done that. She's quite right wing."
Allegedly. Yes. Um, we're going to pay £480, nearly £500 every person in Britain because of the war. That's another anti-Trump guise going around at the moment. It's probably true. It's going to cost us money at the petrol pump. By the way, to make it even worse, Sid, to rub salt in the wound, I was shopping around for petrol here in Spain the other day, and I was paying the equivalent of £1 35p a litre. You're paying nearly £2 a litre for diesel. Now, wow, the reason for that is, of course, even though we've got a left-wing government, maybe even lefter than the UK at the moment, they've got a bit of common sense. So what's going on? Well, they've said, right, let's have a VAT holiday. Don't pay VAT until this lot is over. Now, of course, Britain can do the same. They've got the biggest slice of the pie in taxes. But they daren't because we're in such a mess economically. Cut off that waterhole, you're in problems.
Yes, and the spending spree that Labour launched when they got elected, which caused them to put up the deficit enormously, and also to raise taxes to by more than 60 billion, has is now absolutely coming home to roost because they haven't now got the leeway which they should have in order to help with the energy. And it's interesting, when we had the Ukraine war, the Conservatives launched the energy price guarantee, which basically meant that the energy prices wouldn't go up by more than about 15%. The Labour Party said that's not generous enough. Energy prices should be frozen. They're now saying, oh, the energy price guarantee was too generous. We can't do anything like that again. But it's very, very interesting. Everything they said in opposition, they're doing the opposite in government. And it just shows that they're completely unprincipled. And by the way, if you don't mind me just going off on a tangent, this was also highlighted by the fact that Keir Starmer said very strongly in Parliament that Boris Johnson should not be on holiday. You can't make decisions from the beach. This is a key time, and he should be back in Downing Street. And what happens? We've now got a war in Iran, and Keir Starmer's on holiday. And it's just like, what? You know, what he says and what he does are completely the opposite.
There's a lot of anger in Britain. There has been for quite a few months. I think it's about to explode, maybe the way that Ireland has gone. They're protesting against various things, mainly cost of gas, diesel, and I think it's about to break out in Britain because, of course, the farmers have already set up the means to do this. They're quite well organised after the last foray about inheritance tax with the government, which honestly is another sticking plaster. They've not gone the whole hoop with that either. The government, you can only get relief up to 2.5 million, which is nothing if you own a farm. One tractor costs that practically these days. Moving on, Sid, we've mentioned what's going to befall Britain. Recently, last 3 days, we've got another 5 hours to wait. The straits are going to be blocked by America. Now, here again, Trump has come in for criticism. Has he done the right thing?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I don't know, but I think what he's saying to Iran is that I am not going to allow you to control the Straits of Hormuz and charge ships for coming through there. I'm not going to allow it to happen. So if you're going to be charging ships, then I'm going to block them so that your charges mean nothing. So basically what he's saying is he's not allowing Iran to control the Straits of Hormuz. Now, what the next step is, frankly, I don't know because that can't be the end of the story. It can't be the fact that America is going to blockade the Straits of Hormuz from now on. So it's got to be just a temporary measure. So what's the next measure? You see, America have amassed thousands and thousands of troops in ships off Iran. And, they're there, they're all there, and they're not going to be there for nothing. They're going to be there for a reason. And it's got to be that if negotiations break down, that Trump will start a land invasion. And I think it's, frankly, in the interest of the people of Iran that he does this. Because although the regime have managed to get a certain number of people out on the street supporting them, I think that's only because of fear. If you don't support us, then we'll kill you, which is what's happened to the demonstrators. So this is what Saddam Hussein did over and over again. You got people out in the streets chanting in his support, but the people weren't really in his support. It's only just because they basically said, if you don't chant in support of Saddam Hussein, we'll kill you. And it's quite a powerful incentive to chant in favour of somebody if the alternative is death. But the reality is, if the Americans go in there and take out this regime, the people of Iran will be absolutely, thrilled. They'll be cheering the Americans to the echo.
Mm.
And since that's obviously going to be the case, I think he's going to do it. And this blockading the Straits of Hormuz is just a very small part of his plan, whatever that plan is, which frankly, he's not telling us what it is because he wants it to be a surprise to the Iranians.
Moving on, Sid, again, also reverting back to what you said earlier about Keir Starmer not getting involved.
Mm.
He's not getting involved in the Straits of Hormuz either. He doesn't want to even send minesweepers. Now, that's defensive. He has got no passion for what is happening worldwide. He doesn't care. He just wants to maintain himself and his mates in number 10.
Yes. And it's also one thing is noticeable about Keir Starmer is he's very slow to make decisions. So he'll come along. I mean, he's even said to Donald Trump, "I need to talk to my team, and we'll have a look at it and consider." And it's just like, and Trump has just started mocking him. What do you mean? He's talking to his team? Ha 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 ha. You know, but he's just avoiding making decisions, frankly, and he wants to just put everything into the long grass. Okay, yeah, we'll have a look at it. We'll consider it. We'll see whether we may be able to help and do something. And then he ends up doing little or nothing. It's that's Keir Starmer for you. A terrible, terrible prime minister.
And he's even allegedly, again, breaking news today. There are 4 or 5 real leftists, Marxists in that cabinet. And these are the people he's getting advice from, and he daren't face them down. That is awful. How can you run anything, never mind a country, with that going on behind you?
Well, yes, but that is the problem of the Labour Party having such a big majority, because because they've got such a big majority. There are a lot of people on the back benches that think we can speak against government policy and it doesn't matter. They'll still win the vote. And see, but it's now got to a point where the people saying that are getting others round them, and there's about 140, 150 Labour MPs that are willing to speak out. Now, I think Rachel Reeves made a massive mistake in the very beginning of the government in announcing that she was getting rid of the winter fuel allowance. Because that certainly wasn't in the Labour Party manifesto. It was a shock to all the Labour MPs. And frankly, it was a shock to people in the country. Like, what do you mean you're getting rid of the winter fuel allowance? What are you doing that for? And they thought they could just blame the Conservatives because they thought they could say, oh, we've inherited a 20 billion black hole. They've put us into an impossible situation and we're going to have to get rid of the winter fuel allowance. Look what the Tories have done. But it didn't work. They didn't say, oh, it's all the fault of the Tories. They said it's what you've done. It's what Labour have done. The Conservatives weren't going to do that. And the backbenchers were like, hearing from their constituency how unpopular the move was, they're saying, well, yes, I don't know why we're doing it. I don't know why my government's doing this. I'm not happy either. And that was right from the very beginning of this government. And then they carried on doing other things. I mean, particularly what they were going to do to trim the welfare state and to cut the spending on the welfare state. And then the Labour MPs are like, I'm not allowing that. I'm not being elected to cut the welfare state. What are they playing at? So they told their whips in no uncertain terms they weren't going to support cutting the welfare state. Some was forced to back down. I mean, one of his many U-turns. But having backed down then on that, and to a limited extent backed down as well on the winter fuel allowance, suddenly he's now backing down on anything that is unpopular to the left wing of the party. Having got into that position where he's being forced to back down and does back down, he's now having to listen to the left wing of the Labour Party before making announcements. That's what's going on.
Come back, Jeremy Corbyn. Are we surprised? Even that statement. I don't think he was as extreme as this the last time he really nearly made it.
Well, the thing about Jeremy Corbyn is that he was honest. So you knew what he thought. I mean, frankly, I think his policies were terrible. I mean, he was just going to nationalize everything, and and we're going to have a national investment bank. Everything was going to be state controlled, and I think the policies were awful, frankly. But at least you knew where he stood. He wasn't somebody that said one thing and then did something else. With Starmer, you don't know where you stand. All the promises he's made before the election, he's broken. And it's one thing after another. I mean, even today, to the extent that it's now been announced that we're going to be following the single market rules. They said exactly the opposite before the election, and they said exactly the opposite in their manifesto. But where did he get that from? Maybe the left wing of the Labour Party approved that.
I was going to raise that as you raised it already, Sid. Let's concentrate on this. It's been plainly obvious to anybody that he wants back into Europe. And this is the way back into Europe. And it is awful. He's turning his back on the majority of people, whatever the recent, because you don't trust them, polls are about Brexit. At the time, at least, and possibly even now, people voted for that. And he's looking at them in the face and saying, clear off, you got it wrong. Shame on you, Starmer.
Yeah, absolutely. But you see, the thing is, it's dishonest because you don't say prior to an election, we're not, and I know what circumstances will we be rejoining the single market or the customs union. That's what he said. That's what was in the Labour Party manifesto. And then you get elected, and then you say, yeah, we're now following all the rules of the single market. I'm sorry, that is utterly and totally dishonest. And you see, that's what you were saying, about Jeremy Corbyn. See, at least with Jeremy Corbyn, he said what his policies were, he said what he was going to do, and then you know full well if he got elected, he was going to implement those policies. You knew what he was going to do. With Starmer, you don't know what he's going to do. He said one thing and he's doing things that are completely different. And like you say, I don't believe these polls that are like everyone is now in favour of the European Union again. I think all these polls are completely manufactured, and a lot of it depends what question you ask. If you ask the question, "Do you think Brexit has been a success?" Then a lot of people that are in favour of Brexit will say, "No, it hasn't," because they never properly implemented it. So if they ask the question, do you think Brexit's been a success? They'll get the answer no from a lot of people.
Mm.
If they ask the question, do you think we should rejoin the single market? They'll get the question, no, we shouldn't rejoin the single market. We're better off out. It just depends what question you ask.
Sid, we have lived in Europe for more than 40 years, and we know what Europe is really like.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, in Britain, you've not only got half an idea, whether it comes to driving laws, eating laws, schooling laws, whatever you mean, they are controlling us. And
Yeah.
this is bureaucracy gone mad.
Yeah.
Believe you me, Brits, come and live abroad for a couple of years and realize what is really going on here.
Yeah, totally. That's why we voted to leave because we don't want to be controlled. We want to actually decide in the UK what the UK government does. And Starmer knew that. He said very clearly before the election, people have voted to leave the European Union and we can't go back on that decision. We've got to make the most of it. That's what he said. And because he said that, the European Union was not an issue in the last election, and he wanted to make sure it wasn't an issue. So people weren't talking about it because, no one is saying we should go back into the European Union. So, you can't vote on the basis of the European Union because no one's saying we should go back in. That was the situation at the last election. Now, if Starmer had honestly said at the last election, I think we should be rejoining the single market and we should be rejoining the customs union, if that had been his policy, Labour would probably not have got elected. And he knew that. He knew that.
Yeah, to give a taster, because we've got a number of programs again planned around this. Um, if you are, as an example, thinking of coming to live in dear old Spain, let's take your average person that comes, thinks, and oh, it's sunshiny here. I'm about to retire. Let's retire a bit earlier. I've worked hard 9 days a week, 25 hours a day, and I've built up a little company. And I want to retire early and enjoy it. Forget it. And this will just show you how stupid left wing governments are, because there are new laws coming in, encouraging, encouraged from Brussels, of course. So you decide to come to Spain and you've got to pay tax. Well, that's all right. You've got to pay tax in any country. The taxes are higher here, even than Britain in many respects. Not much. It's fairly comparable. So you shrug your shoulders and say, OK, I'll put up with that. Well, hang on. Are there any other taxes? Well, there's a wealth tax and a solidarity tax. Now, that's straight out of the Marxist songbook.
Mm.
In a word alone sums it up.
Yes.
Because your worldwide wealth is taxed. Hang on. I've earned that in another country. I'm not a rich person, but I'm well off. What's it got to do with you, Spain? You've done nothing for that. I want to pass that on to my children and grandchildren. Oh, you can't do that. Welcome to Spain. By the way, and this is not the real rich people, it's the average self-employed bloke that's built up maybe a factory, maybe he owns property, maybe he's got something in the bank account. The average person will have to pay a wealth tax in Spain of approximately £250,000, not a one-off tax, every year. Now, number one, who's going to come to Spain and retire anymore? Think of all the wealth you're losing, Spain. Well, they don't think because they're left wing. They're Marxists. They're not interested in that. They want the quick buck straight away. Now, that is Europe, not every country. Let's hope dear old Hungary don't go down that route. I don't think they will. But when you get overthrown after being in power for 17 years, and sometimes are the only light for a Christian based country, and then even that is one of the last countries to go to the real left. Europe is in a mess. Spain is in a mess. Not all of it, because certain parts of Spain have rejected part of that tax, but not the whole amount of the tax. They can't get round it. Portugal won't have a wealth tax. Well, they've got one, but it's 0.001% and or whatever it is, and nobody bothers with that. Europe is in an absolute mess.
Yes, I totally share your abhorrence with the wealth tax. By the way, the only party that's actually proposed a wealth tax in this country is the Greens, and that was in their manifesto that they would be charging everybody with £10 million or more would pay 1% per year. That was in their manifesto. And they also said in their manifesto that they would raise 84 billion from this wealth tax, which frankly is laughable. I mean, they'd be lucky to raise 8 billion, let alone 84 billion, because the first thing that happens is that everybody goes and locates abroad. Because if you happen to own more than £10 million in assets, and by the way, some of the people caught up with this are pensioners, because people are retired with more than £10 million of assets, and they're told, oh, you've got to pay 1%, and they haven't got income to pay it, so they've then got to start selling property in order to pay it. But it's this. You see, what happens is, you announce this tax. You see, the thing is that wealthy people that have got more than £10 million in assets, are probably going to be business people on the whole, or people in the past who've been successful business people, and they're just going to relocate their businesses abroad. And this is what happened in France. You see, France actually had a wealth tax, But then they abandoned it because it wasn't working, because it was actually having a big negative effect on the economy. Spain have got this, like you say, extreme left-wing government at the moment that's trying all these things out. Spain will probably decide, oh, the wealth tax has been a disaster. There's far too many people left, like you say, and gone abroad. People aren't coming here and locating here as they did previously. We're gonna, we've actually lost a lot of money by having this wealth tax. We're going to have to get rid of it. That's probably what will happen in Spain shortly. But, yeah, the whole concept, frankly, is wrong. I don't have any problem myself with inheritance tax because I think inheritance tax is a good tax above a threshold. I think there should be a threshold of at least £1 million. But if you've lived your life, you've earned your money, there's no reason why you should be giving more than £1 million to your descendants, frankly. I think people should be earning their own money. So I have no problem with inheritance tax, but wealth tax on people that are alive, that have earned money or are earning money and contributing to the country is frankly immoral. It's wrong.
Interesting, Sid. We won't take up the inheritance tax. We'll save that to another occasion. But certainly, thankfully, we're just working in Spain at the moment. So we're not resident. We're resident in another country that has seen the light regarding that. Now, akin to this, actually, it may not sound akin, but I'm going to challenge you, Sid. We're used to living in an incremental tax situation whereby the rich pay more tax and the poor pay none. Well, that's the notional way of doing things. I'm growing more and more for a level taxation, and I don't want to tax the rich. I want everybody to pay the same tax. I don't mind having some eligibility if you've got 3, 4 children, as an example, and you're earning very basic wages. Yeah, you don't start paying tax till a certain level. But if you let the rich gain more money, they'll stay in your country, they'll give your country more money. They'll work harder because they can keep more of what they should be keeping. And it works out for the benefit of the country. Everybody gets richer, not just the feckless and the clever people who are gaming a situation like we have in Britain at the moment. Benefit Britain.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree. You see, what I think is wrong is taking more than 50% of somebody's money. I think the top rate of tax should be no more than 50%. And I think that's a reasonable top level. I mean, we did have a time in the Labour Party in the 1970s when you had a top rate of tax of 83%, and then you had a investment income surcharge that brought you a top rate of tax of 98% if it was investment income, which was just like absolutely crazy. And bit by bit, the Conservatives brought it down. But I remember when Nigel Lawson announced that his top rate of tax was going to be 40% and no one was going to pay more than 40%, there was a gasp, frankly, because they thought, well, that is putting enormous amounts of money into the pockets of wealthy people because the top rate of tax at the time was 60%. So he was actually brought the top rate of tax down from 60 to 40. And I myself said that's too low. 40% is too low. I think 50% is should be a top rate of tax and a reasonable top rate of tax. But um, you're quite right that people that are producing wealth should not be chased out of the country, and there is certainly an argument for making sure that the people that are wealthy are looked after. But the way I think it should be done is by introducing a turnover tax, so companies pay a percentage of their turnover, and that should be offset against corporation tax to reduce the tax on profits. You see, the idea that profits are a bad thing is nonsense, frankly. I think profits are a good thing. So we've got to look at tax on profits, we've got to look at turnover tax, we've got to look at indirect taxation, not just income tax, and make sure that the whole system is fair.
Well, we'll move from one difficult subject to another. It's called Ofcom. And they have been a thorn in the flesh for many decades now, and they're getting worse. You wouldn't believe how much news media is controlled by Ofcom. You've just got to walk in the doors of
Yes.
our friendly news media, GB News, to realise how much. You've just got to watch the programming. They are kowtowing. I'm not blaming them for this because it's very, very problematical. When I ran Sky channels, I had the same problem with them. There's no mercy. Whatever they say goes on. And even to the tune now, they're funding by £50,000 the Guardian Foundation. Now, the Guardian newspaper is quite famous, started in Manchester, my hometown. And they've said, oh, there's £50,000, but you've got to do it our way, the liberal, progressive way. You've got to open a school in Manchester, a school in London to train the new media folk of the future, mainly journalists. This shouldn't be allowed, Sin. That is awful.
Mm. Well, yes. Now, I've got major concerns with Ofcom because I think Ofcom are very anti-Christian because it's not only GB News, it's also Christian television. And Christian television have been told, for instance, that you mustn't criticize homosexuality. And if you criticize homosexuality, you'll lose your license. Now, so that is anti-free speech. I mean, they won't say the same to the left wing. They won't say, if you express support for Hamas or you express support for Palestine action, then you'll lose your license, even though these organizations are outlawed. So saying things that are perfectly legal, they say is not allowed, but saying things that is illegal are allowed. So Ofcom, frankly, needs a massive overhaul. But this is just one of the problems with the deep state that we've got in the UK. See, there's people got into key positions, frankly, that are dictating things that are are awful. Ofcom are not operating on a correct, reasonable, level playing field for broadcasters, which they should be.
Yeah. Before we leave the war, let's finally mention Trump and his attitude to NATO. He's on the cusp of coming out, and I can't blame him. He says, well, I've paid into this more than anybody else for donkey's years. I'm not carrying on paying that. In fact, it should be broken up. And he's about to make a statement on that. Is he right?
Well, you see, if you look at it from the point of the United States, under what circumstances will Europe come to the support of the United States? See, the United States is unlikely to be invaded by Canada or Russia for that matter, or Mexico, or any countries round about them. They're very unlikely to be invaded to the point that Europe will have to say, "Oh, we're going to have to send some troops over to the United States to help them out." See, so all the threat is directed at Europe, and there are very serious threats directed at Europe. There's no question about that. So, and the United States has got by far the strongest armed forces in the world. So Europe can clearly benefit from having the United States come and support them if they're attacked. So it's Europe that needs NATO. It's not the America that needs NATO. So Trump has basically said, well, in his last administration, he says, you need to contribute more. You're not contributing enough. And of course, Starmer comes along and says, yes, I totally agree. We do need to contribute more. We'll contribute more. We guarantee that we'll increase our spending on defence up to 5% by 2030. Of course, he won't be in office in 2030. At the moment, his defence spending is still about 2.5%. He hasn't actually increased defence spending at all. He's just made an announcement that we will do in the future, under another government. It's just ridiculous. So he's just playing a game. And Trump is not somebody that you can play games with. He can see that they're playing games. He knows Starmer's playing games. That's why he's completely fallen out with Keir Starmer now. And, the whole of Europe is basically turning round and saying, we're not supporting you over Iran. And he says, okay, you're not supporting me over Iran. When will you ever support me? I've had enough. I'm off. I don't blame him one iota, frankly.
Time has gone, Sid. We'll have to do a quick sports event, as we usually do. And I'm going to entitle this Mind Over Matter. It's all right to have a decent body and to get to number one, but you've got to have a decent mind as well. And maybe I can illustrate this three times. Number one, Arsenal. Well, they've been goaded by the press, haven't they? You're losing it. You've not got the guts. You won't make it.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the last few seasons, when Man City have won the title, at the end of the season, they've gone win, 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 win. They've been absolutely 100%. And this weekend has been terrible for Arsenal. I mean, to lose at home to Bournemouth, while Man City were playing away at Chelsea and they won convincingly, you would think on paper the results are going to go the other way. You would expect Arsenal to win easily at home to Bournemouth, and you would expect Man City to struggle away at Chelsea. So the fact that that hasn't happened, really means now that if Man City do what they've done in previous seasons and just don't lose a point for the rest of the season, Arsenal are going to struggle. They've either got to come good quickly or Man City are going to win the title.
Yeah, they're giving us a thriller at the end, aren't they? Tell you who also gives us a thriller at the end, and that's Rory in Augusta. My goodness me, he struggled last year, and it was on extra time that things eventually went right, ahead halfway, and then lose it all. And what an excitement at the end. And it was poor old Justin Rose. Bless him. This is the third time he's come number two. But there again is the difference in the mind.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, and yeah, I was watching it yesterday, and Rory McIlroy didn't do that badly. I mean, he was 12 under at halfway and he finished 12 under, so he didn't throw it away. Unlike the Irish golfer Shane Lowry, who's from the Republic of Ireland, who was 9 under and actually finished 1 under because he shot an 80 in the final round. You see, Rory McIlroy just shot level par in his third and fourth rounds. So he didn't throw it away, but the rest of the field came back at him. So there were other players, particularly Scheffler, who's the number one in the world, who was 5 under, miles behind McIlroy at halfway, finished 11 under. So he finished just one shot behind. And Justin Rose did very well. I mean, he was actually leading the field by 2 at one point. He was 12 under. But unfortunately, he got the scourges of Amen Corner, which is the hardest part of the golf course, and he finished 10 under. But yeah, Justin Rose was actually leading by 2 strokes at one point, and I thought, oh, come on, yeah, Justin, yes, you need to, for once, let's see Justin Rose win. I'd love him to have won, frankly. But well done, Rory McIlroy. I mean, he held some fantastic putts, which is what Justin Rose didn't, by the way. I mean, he had a chance and he just didn't hold his putts. And holding the putts is just so important because it makes, if you end up right by the hole, it's a shot lost. But if you hold a long putt, it just gives you a tremendous boost. But yeah, I think. And Rory McIlroy's got a lot of supporters in Northern Ireland, and it's great to see him succeeding, frankly, and well done. He's matched the record of Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, and Tiger Woods winning two Masters in a row, and it's great for him. Great success, great story.
It is. And let's see what happens next year. Finally, we go on to the real problem. Ms. Raducanu. And well, you tell me, Sid. I'm not a big tennis fan. I watch it occasionally, but I remember watching her at Wimbledon. I don't know. Was she on a 12th coach? And I'd not really followed her career, but I was quite surprised. She's a cracking tennis player. And then after the first set, something happened, distraction, goodness knows what. But she just completely lost it. And she lost about 8, 9 points in a row. And it was clear to me, well, that is the problem. And obviously, with the number, she's gone back to number one coach at the moment. So she's got the whole set there, literally. And it's a shame when you've got the ability, but not the mental strength.
Yeah, I think she won the US Open probably a little bit too early in her career, frankly. But the problem is after she won the US Open, and she's a good-looking lass, and she got a lot of sponsorship. A lot of people came in, they wanted her to be the face of their product, and she was earning enormous amounts of money from sponsorship. And I think that spoiled her, frankly. And she's only, so obviously she was very young. It went to her head. She no longer had the focus to really concentrate on tennis and win tennis matches. Money was coming much too easily without winning any tennis matches. I think that's been the problem of Emma Raducanu, I'm afraid. But you're quite right. She's not focused.
There you go. We've got a lot to focus on these days. Things are happening not every day, every 5 minutes, Sid. And it's certainly not boring time, is it?
No, no, it certainly isn't. And but it's very interesting how angry people are generally with Starmer, and he's only making people more angry. So when we come to these local elections, which are coming up very soon, he's going to get a hiding. He's really going to get a hiding.
There you go. And we're not prophesying and looking ahead that way. We know what's going to happen. Sid, you're on the doorstep for the next few weeks, but we're still seeing you. And you'll be wearing your souls out. And that may be a cryptic reference to what is really wrong with the country. But we won't pursue that at the moment. We'll see you shortly.
Thanks.